Okay guys, in this first question, when you see something is rounded to the nearest, always halve it. So if it's rounded to the nearest 10, halve it 5 centimeters. I can add and subtract 5 centimeters from each one of these measurements on the rugby pitch. It says, what is the least possible length of A across to B? So I know I need to subtract 5 centimeters off 10, 10, and the 100. First thing which I've done here is just change all of the meters to centimeters. Then I've subtracted to find the lower bound. So I've got 995, 995, 9,995. Then I'm going to add them up, which gives me 11,985. But then the question did say the answer's got to be in meters. So I then divided by 100 to change it back to meters. Okay, obviously you could have done it slightly differently, but that's my final answer. 119.85. Okay, for the next question then, recognise here we've got a cylinder. It says calculate internal volume. So the volume of the cylinder is going to be the area of the circle times by the height. So pi r squared, 3.14 times 3.6 squared times by 9.3. Nice and easy for 2 marks. So then my answer rounded is 378.5 centimeters cubed. Okay, nice, easy. Next one says every 1 centimeter cubed of baked beans in a tin has a mass of 1 gram. So 1 gram is 1 centimeters cubed. A portion of baked beans is half of a tin. What is the mass of a portion of baked beans? Well, if we know the full tin is this number here, half of it is a portion, so I got to halve that answer, which is 189.23 or something slightly different if you rounded. But then all I got to do is write that in grams because 1 centimeters cubed is the same as a gram. Next one, these are mathematically similar. So if I just look at the relationship I have between them already, this one is 3.6, the radius of this new one is 4.2. I need to find out what do I multiply 3.6 by to get to my 4.2. This is actually called the scale factor. So I'm going to divide the larger length, 4.2, by 3.6, and I know this is 1.16 recurring times bigger, times larger. So now I know the 9.3. To get the 9.3 to the height, I simply multiply. So 1 mark here, second mark for the 10.85. Okay. For this one here then, in a portion of baked beans, there is this much salt, this much sugar. For a woman, the recommended daily allowance is obviously slightly larger than what's in one portion. Consider a portion of baked beans. Is it salt or sugar that provides the greater portion? So I like to think about this as if I had 1.85. So we just focus on salt first, and salt here. Imagine in a test you have 1.85 marks out of 6. What would you do to find a percentage? You divide what you got by what it's out of, times by 100. And that's all I've done there, okay? Except this time it's not a test, it's just comparing salt. So 1.85 divided by 6 times 100 gives me 30.83%. Similarly for sugar, I'll do 117 divided by, 11.7 divided by 90 times by 100, and then that gives me 13%. So which one gives me the greater? So salt gives me the greatest proportion, okay? 3rd mark for showing salt. Okay, guys, I'm going to ignore that top sentence because that gives you the extra 2 marks. Genuinely, I think for 9 marks here, 7 plus 2 is a stunning question. So we got 3 months she wants a budget for. This is all the information we need to know. What I'm going to start by doing is just focusing on her meter reading at the beginning and then her meter reading at the end. And what hopefully you know is you need to find the gap between these two to find out how many units you have used. So I'll subtract the 2 first. Now remember, you want to get your bonus marks for your layout. So say what you're doing. So I know 800 units is what I have. I'm estimating I'm going to use. I'm then going to multiply that by 0.23. If I'm going to be really picky, could maybe chuck the pound sign in there. Why have I multiplied by 0.23? Because obviously this is 23p and we want it in pounds, so I've just changed it there. 184 pounds, okay, so that's going to get you 2 marks. Electricity used. The next thing then, the standard charge, so it did say at the top, is £8 per month, so I've got to do 8 times 3. Again, if I'm going to be picky, you could chuck a pound sign in there. £24. Okay, there's no other charges, so I know I can add them 2 up, which is 184 plus the 24, gives me £208, cracking, 4 out of 7. But then for your 5th mark, don't forget we've got to find 5% and add it on. So 5%, if you want to find 5% on a calculator, just write it as 5 over 100 and then times it by 204 or something similar. £10.20, I'll add the £10.20 back on then because we know we've got to add VAT on. So the total payable, including VAT, this is for your 6th mark, is £218.20. But the question said, calculate how much you should budget. If I go back to the top. So to find out how much you should budget each month, if that's going to be the total cost over 3 months, I'm going to divide that total cost by 3. And roughly, for a budget, we want to be focusing on £72.73. So roughly 73 quid. Okay, lovely question for 9 marks. Genuinely, guys, for 4 marks, I think this is quite a nice one again, as long as you know your compound interest method. So she starts off with £500 for 20 years, but the compound interest rates change. Unfortunately, it drops. So for the first 5 years, it's 2.2%. So where have my workings come from here? It's always the money multiplied by, because it's an increase, we know it's got to be 1 at the front, or if you added the 2.2, you've got 102.2%. And then obviously if I wrote this as a decimal, it'd be 1.022 to the power of 5, because that's how many years we're going to be making the interest on. So that gives me the answer of £557.47p. Now, similarly, the next workings are going to be slightly different because we know it's for the remaining 15 years. So I've got my answer here, I have to use that there, times by 1.016. Why is it slightly different now? Because obviously the interest rate changed to the power of 15, and then that gives me the answer of £707.338. Obviously, tidy up your answer by the end of it. It's going to be 2 marks per workings for the different compound interest rates. Okay, guys, I'm seeing by here triangles, and I can see right angles. So I'm thinking Pythagoras or SOHCAHTOA. Go to the first one, calculate the length of support 1. Well, hopefully you can see a right angle triangle there. This is the hypotenuse, so we've got to be using Pythag because we have 2 lengths. So nice and simple, 1.2 squared plus 0.9 squared. Then I know I need to square root my answer once I've added them, and you should get the hypotenuse of 1.42 meters for support 1. Nice easy 3 marker to get you going. For the next one, it says the length of support 2 is 2.6. I know it's quite small at the moment. Calculate the angle between the horizontal ground and support 2. So if we go back to our diagram here, calculate the angle between the horizontal ground and support 2. So that's the angle we need to find. Okay, we know all of this is the 1.1 and the 0.8, which is going to give me 1.9. So let's just draw that slightly. Better. Okay. Now then, 1.9. We know we need to find the angle. It tells us the support is 2.2. Sorry, can't see. That'll help. It tells us the angle is 2.6 rather. Now it's just about labeling it, so opposite, hypotenuse, adjacent, and then deciding which one from SOHCAHTOA we need to use. If you're ignoring A, you need O and H, which is obviously going to be SO. Okay, substitute it into the formula, and off you go. Remember, whenever you're trying to find an angle, guys, it's always going to be to the power of minus. It's always going to be to the power of a -1. So whether it's sine, cos, or tan. So the answer we have for our angle is going to be 47 degrees. Okay, quite lenient with your rounding though. Nice easy 3 marker. All right then, guys. With this one here, Mr. Jacob gets a quote of £516. The quote includes 8 hours labour costs at £22 per hour, a 20% discount off the cost of the bricks. Calculate the cost of the bricks before the discount. So this is the cost after everything. So we need to work our way backwards. So first thing I'm going to do is find out the cost of the labour. Nice and easy, 1 mark. 8 times £22.50 is £180. I'm then going to subtract that away from the 516, because I now know the bricks cost me 336, but this is a bit which you need to get your head around. 20% discount off the cost of the bricks. So if I had a 20% discount off the cost of the bricks, I know £336 equals 80%. So I need to find out what 100% is. I can't go dividing this by 10. Okay, it's a couple of ways you could do it. Easiest way to do it would be divide by 80. Because if you divide by 80, you're going to find what 1% is. And then once you've done that, you can multiply it by 100 straight away, and that will take you back up to 100%, which is 420. Okay. Like I said, a few different ways you could have done it. You could have divided this number here by 4, because if you divide by 4, obviously 80 divided by 4 would give you 20%. And whatever that number is then, you could add it back on to get you up to 100. And it'll give you the same answer of £420, okay? But your second mark is coming for noticing that 80% equals 336. Right, so a bit hard there to try and get the full 3 marks. Okay. This is asking me to find the median value first. Well, the only way you can find the median is if you know how many were asked in the first place. So if I add them up, it equals 120. So obviously the middle person or the middle value is going to be half of that, halfway. So it's got to be 60 along. And the first 64 monthly wages are in here. So it's got to be that first group, 1,800 to 2,000. Okay. Next question. Alicia is an accountant working for Kenworth Electricity. She knows the exact wage of each employee. Alicia says it would be misleading to use the mean monthly wage as an average. Explain why she has reached this conclusion. So all I've written here is knowing exact wages means knowing exact wages can work out accurate / actual mean, not estimates, but means affected by outliers, i.e. for very high wages. So if we just reword that really simply, the reason why it could be misleading is if you look here, majority of the wages are all in these two groups, and then the second it jumps up to more than double the amount of monthly wage, only 4 people here earn it. So if you ignored those 4 people, or even those 6 out of the 120, the rest of them are all pretty much the same average wage. So the 4 outliers make it misleading. I want us to complete the diagram. What I'm going to do is just look at this numbers here. Hopefully you know cumulative frequency means everything from 0 up to this last number. So effectively you lose this inequality part on the left. So where does the 48 come from? I've just done 8 added to the 40. 8 added to 40 gives me 48. And then to get here, the number is 72. It's the 24, the 40, and the 8, 72. And then the last part is obviously all of them added together to get me to the 80. Okay? And that's the only way I can then finish off my diagram. Okay? So the last part from 2,400, which is plotted by there, at the value of 72, then straight up to 80 to 3,000. Okay, which of the following is the best estimate for the median monthly wage? Okay, so the median is going to be halfway, so 40 out of 80, 40 across and down, and then make sure you use your scale properly. Right, little bit tricky to see there, but it's 2,160. All right. For this bit, it says calculate an estimate of the percentage of people, so we know it's got to be out of 80, a monthly wage of less than this number here, £2,050. So, go back to your diagram. If I just zoom in here, 2,100 would be there, so 2,050 has got to be in the middle, which is here. If you follow my pen up, it falls on this line. If I follow that across, well, it's going up in 2s, so that's got to be 18 people. Okay, so 18 people, I'll zoom back out, 18 people out of the 80 times by 100 gives me the answer of 22.5%. Okay, 1 mark for noticing 18, and then obviously final mark for your percentage. Okay guys, for this one here, we know it's telling us to find AER. So I've written down this formula here. It gives it to you on the formula page. I hope you already know that. But be careful. I is the interest rate written as a decimal. That is a decimal, but that's a percentage. That's not actually a percentage converted to a decimal. So we've got to convert these to decimals. Okay, so divide them by 100. So I'm going to make a little note of that so you don't forget. And then N is the periods throughout the year. So this one's quite easy because it's every month, so we know it's going to be to the power of 12, right? So that's why here, how have I changed 0.41 to a decimal? I've just divided it by 100. I'm hoping you're okay with that. And then I've written it the exact same way as the formula says, over 12, because N stands for the number of months, which is 12. And I just type all that in my calculator, okay? Minus the 1. And that gives me the answer of 0.41. Okay, Then going to do the exact same thing, but it's slightly harder this time for the other bank, because the decimal, that's easy enough. I've just divided this by 100, hence where the 0.042 comes from. But why is it to the power of 4? Well, because the interest is paid every 3 months. And how many 3 months get you to a full year? Well, obviously 4 of them. That's why it's to the power of 4. Write it down the exact same way. Type it all in my calculator as it looks there. And that gives me the answer of 5.01. Slightly different answer. And then how do I find the difference between the two? Well, I just subtract them, okay? It's a little bit tricky. You're gonna get a mark for noticing this bit here. You're gonna obviously get a mark for your answer here. You have a mark for noticing you need to use the formula. So that's 3 out of the 5. And then another mark for your substitution here and here, okay? Don't forget the 4.6 difference. Little bit tricky. Okay. The masses of the players in the men's 2017-18 rugby squad are shown in the histogram below. The squad consisted of 34 players. What you notice here is they've actually forgotten to label it for you. So this question says, label the following vertical axis. I'm hoping that's a given 1 marker, frequency, density. All right then, next bit, the histogram shows that the mass of the heaviest member of the squad was double the mass of the lightest. What is my reason for saying you cannot tell? Well, it's because they were in groups, guys. You don't know the actual weights, right? So a nice given 1 mark there. Next one's not as simple though. It says the lightest forward had a mass of 104. So if the lightest had a mass of 104, calculate the maximum possible number of forwards there could have been in the squad. So that means I need to go to 104, okay? As you can see, 104 is here. So if I went all the way up to 104, effectively, you are now assuming everybody from that point to the right, all of these people in the histogram are going to be forwards because you want the maximum possible number. So from here to here is 6 squares. So for this part, to find out how many people there is, I'm going to do 6, that's the width, times by the 0.8, okay? So that's why I've done that there, 6 times 0.8, which is 4.8. For the next bit then, the class width is 10 times 1.1, and then the last bit is 20 times 0.1, I think so, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah, okay, so that's why I've done that there. By doing that, you can see I do have a bit of a decimal, but that's going to give me 17.8 players, so I've rounded that up to 18 players as the maximum, all right? A little bit tricky, but you have to assume the maximum possible. If the smallest is 104, everybody after is then going to be a forward. Next one says, to make a comparison with other teams, the coach wanted to know the mean mass, so the average mass of the players in the squad. Use a histogram to calculate an estimate of the mean mass. So this is all my workings, but let's explain how I've done this, because for 5 marks, it's not that simple. I'm going to start by finding out how many people are in each class width, so in each block. So that's going to be the area. So it's 20 times by 0.4, which is going to give me 8 people there. Then going to be 10 times, what's that, 0.5, so that's 5. That's where I've got 5 from. Then going to be 10 times 0.8, which is 8 people. Just double check about that there. And then it's going to be 10 times 1.1, which is 11 people. And then the last bit is 20 times by 0.1, which is going to give me 2. So 5, 8, 5, 8, 11, 2. Just double check about that there. 8, 5, 8, 11, 2. Great. Now, because these are already in groups, we got to use the midpoints. So it's like estimating the mean, but you're doing it from a histogram. So for this, it's going to be 8 times the midpoint of this class is 70, 80. So between 70 and 90. So that's got to be 80. So I'm going to assume these 8 people weighed 80. These 5 people weighed 95. These 8 people weighed 105. These 11 people weighed 115. And these 2 people weighed 130, because that's in between the 2. Okay, so that's where my numbers have come from, by here. I'm going to just simply multiply them using my calculator, giving me all of these numbers. Don't get an equal sign. Then I'm going to add all of these up and divide by 34. I'm going to check this adds to 34 anyway, and it does. But where did you know 34 was the amount of people? Well, this does actually say by here, 34 people. So once I've done that, I've added these up, divided by 34 for the mean. That gives me the answer of 102.4 kilograms. 5 marks. So if you've gone for the midpoints, if you found all of these, that's going to give you a mark. If you've gone for the midpoints, second mark. Obviously then you're attempting to multiply them and add them is when you're going to get your next 2 marks. And then obviously your final mark is for dividing by the 34 and get 102.4. Tricky, guys, but quite a nice one if you could see what was happening to get yourself 5 marks. Okay, guys, obviously your back end of the paper now, as we're getting there, it's going to start getting a bit trickier. First thing you need to recognise is that there's actually 2 cones here. You've got your large cone, and then you've got a slightly smaller one on the bottom with a radius which you don't know, the height of 33 compared to the height of the large one, which is 55. Okay, so this bit is just this one chopped off. I'm now going to assume I've got one large one here. Okay, so I don't really need the 22s by there. Okay, ignore that. All right, then, show that the radius of the bucket is 9. Okay, well, that's not too bad. If you recognise that there's similar shapes, from here to here is 55, from here to here is 33. It's quite similar to what we've done earlier. We can just do 55 divided by 33, the bigger divided by the smaller, and that would show me that it's 1.6 recurring. So that means the larger one is 1.6 times bigger than this one here. So if the radius is 15 on the bigger one, I divide by my scale factor to get the radius on the smaller one. So 15 divided by 1.6 gives me the 9. You have to obviously have the 1.6 because it says you've got to prove it is 9. Now we've done that, we can actually find the volume of the bucket. Now the bucket is just this bit. So I need to find the volume of this one and the volume of this cone, subtract the 2. It does say here though that it's in terms of pi. It doesn't tell you do it in terms of pi, but it does say there. So again, use your formula if you need to, well not if you need to. Volume of a cone, a third pi arc squared h, and off we go. So I'm going to do a larger one first, a third times pi, radius is 15 squared, times by the height. That gives me 4,125 pi. Then I'm going to do the same for the volume of the small cone. Obviously, I'm not going to actually multiply the pi. I'll just do the third times the 9 squared times the 33. That gives me 891 pi. Okay, and then for my final mark, what am I going to do? Well, I want to show the volume of the bucket. So we did say now I know the volume of all of this and the volume of the smaller one. I got to subtract the 2. And that takes me to 3,234 pi, which is what it said it had to be there. Okay, so 2 marks for this bit here. Going to get a mark for trying to find the volume of the cone here. Your 4th mark then for finding your volume of the cone here, and your 5th mark for subtracting them and obviously getting the right answer, proving it. But if you're proving something, guys, show as many workings as possible to guarantee yourself the marks. Okay, guys. Again, obviously it is a little bit tricky, but you know, I do think we're capable of getting some marks here. It tells you that these are mathematically similar. Again, 3rd time has come up now. B is 28.6. The actual bucket we had to start with was 22. So I'm going to start by finding my scale factor. So you get yourself 1 mark there. Scale factor is 28.6 divided by 22. Okay, larger divided by the smaller. Great. So now it's all about working with this one here. But because we know it's gallons we're filling inside, we know that we need to find the volume. So this is where now you need to remember scale factor and volume. Well, we do know the volume of the smaller bucket. We've done it here. It was what we proved, 3,234 pi. But remember now, if this one is going to be, this one we had was 22 centimeters. This new one is 28. We know we need to multiply our volume of the older one. So the volume of the smaller one from the previous question, we know we're going to multiply it by our scale factor, but don't forget we have to cube that scale factor because it is volume. If it was area, we'd square the scale factor. If it's volume, we cube it. So that's why I've done that here. You could have done it here though instead. So the volume of the smaller one was 3,234 pi, which I've just rewritten as times by 3.14. I'm then going to times that by my scale factor cubed, which I've already done. And that's given me the volume of 22,310 centimeters cubed. Right, so a little bit tricky, but that's going to get you 3 marks, guys. Okay, so gets you to your 3rd mark Obviously your other marks is showing that you're going to cube the scale factor. Now I've done that, it's now all about changing it to pints and then gallons. So you need to remember, first centimeters cubed is going to be the same as milliliters or liters. So I'm going to divide by 1,000 to change it to liters. So I've got 22.3 rounded liters here. Then what I'm going to do is I need to remember the conversion of, there is 1 litre is the same as 1.75 pints. You need to learn that. So if this is how many litres I've got, I'll multiply it by 1.75 to change it to pints, which is 39.04. So that's going to get me up to my 5th mark here. So that's my 4th, that's my 5th. And my final mark is then obviously using this conversion to change it to gallons. I need to divide by 8. Gives me the answer of 4.88 gallons. Real tricky question, but for 6 marks, try and get your teeth into it. You can still pick up marks for scale factor and cubing. If you can only get the 2 or the 3, yeah, that's still better than achieving 0. Okay then guys, sine and cosine rule. How do I know it? Well, I got angles, I got lengths, and the obvious one is I have triangles. It's towards the end of the paper, it's on a calculator one, so you're going to expect it to come up. Right, for the first one, okay, I need to find this distance and this distance. Well, I have enough. If you see this triangle, I have enough information to use cosine rule to find the 5.44. So all I've done is label this large A, that small a, and then it doesn't matter about B and C. I have shot forward slightly, but if you can't remember, don't forget, it's all there for you, sine, cosine. Okay, and off I go. I substitute it all in, be really careful. My advice would be write it down slowly and just type it on the calculator then, guys. Scientific calculators are great, they'll do the rest for you. So eventually you get the answer of 5.44 for this part here. And 5.44 is obviously this length here, so we've worked out the distance from alpha to ABBA, but now it's all about sine rule. How do you know a sine rule? Because you need this, and that links up with that angle. You've got this angle, and you've got that length. Sine rule is all about pairs, don't forget pairs. So if I redraw this triangle, 118, 5.44, I've just labelled this A, small a, this B, this small b, and this C, and this little c. Again, I've shot forward, but I don't flip the equation. I only flip the equation when I'm trying to find the angle. This time I'm trying to find the length, so it's quite nice. I substitute it in, I grab the sine 32 and move it up here, because I know I've got to multiply it by, to get it to the other side. And then eventually, once I've finished all my calculations in my calculator, just do it, type it in your calculator the same way it looks there, get my answer 3.26. Got 2 marks then for noticing sine and cosine rule, 2 marks for substituting it in, that's 4. Your other 2 marks are for your answers, and then your 7th mark will be to make sure your rounding is all correct. Okay, for this question, guys, I've done some workings here, but I think maybe it's better if I show you a picture. So from 0 up to 180,000, you pay nothing, 0%. Then from 180 up to 255, you pay 3.5%. And then everything over, you pay 5%. So sorry, not 255, 250 in the question. But the actual amount of this house is 255,000. So the first 180k you get for free. What you earn over that, sorry, not what you earn, but what you pay, what the cost is over the 250, which is only the 5 grand. You've got to take off 5% of that only. And then where did the 70 come from? Well, it's the difference because we earned over the threshold. Not earned. The transaction was over the threshold of 250. The gap between 180 and 250 is 70 grand. So that's where my 70 grand's come from. So 180 you got for free, 70 grand you got to obviously pay tax of 3.5%, and then what you earn over it, which is only the 5 grand because it was 255,000, you got to take off 5%. So 3.5% of 70 is that, 5% of 5 grand is that. Add the two together, 2,700. Okay, a little bit tricky, but maybe the picture helps. Okay guys, for this question, the last one, it says, let X be the highest price. Write an equation. So the highest price of the house is not going to be equal to this. This is, you can't go over it. Remember, the price of the house, you're adding on percentages of taxes. So it's basically saying, how would you calculate this? Write it all down in one, how you would calculate it, and it cannot go above that. It's got to equal that number. So the first thing we would do is we'd have the 180,000. Then what we would do, well, we'd add on to that the 3.5%, which is why I've written 1.035, because that's a calculation to add on 3.5% of 70. Where did the 70 come from? Well, I'd done that earlier. That's the gap between 180 and 250. Then the next bit's a bit trickier. So then we got to find 5%, or we would have to find 5% of whatever the cost of it is over 250. And we don't know the cost of it over 250, but what we do know is the cost over 250 would be whatever the cost of the house is minus the 250. That would be how you would calculate the gap between the two. Again, like we did earlier on this question, 255,000, take away the 250, left us with the 5 grand, which we found the 5%. So this time it would be the cost of the house, which we don't know, take away the 250. And all of that's got to equal 327,000. Okay, really, really tricky to understand. But what we can now do is start to simplify that. So all I've done is I've just simplified this bit. I've multiplied this bit by here to get me to there. To add on basically just add on the percentage. And then I've expanded the bracket 1.05x. And then I've times the 1.05 by the 250. Okay, and that still equals this bit here. Then I'm just going to make it a little bit simpler again. So I'm going to add these two. Gives me this number. So that's where this has come from. This bit as it is, this bit as it is. Then how can I make it a bit simpler? Well, what I've just started to do now is obviously move the 25,000, sorry, the 252,450, and I'm going to take away the 262,000. And then obviously I'm going to move it to the other side. And eventually, once I've moved it all around, solving my equation, it's left me with the extra 10 grand to get me to 337,000, and then the £50 left over. So a little bit confusing. Loads of ways you could do it. You could add that first to there. You could then subtract that from your previous answer, right? But I've just sped it up a little bit. So I'm now left with something a little bit simpler. 1.05x equals this. So how do I get the x on its own? Well, I would divide by 1.05. Okay, it's just solving equations, and that would leave me with the cost of the house of 321,000 smack on. Now, you could eventually get to this, but because it says you've got to write down an equation, you're not going to get the marks if you haven't actually tried to write it as an equation. So although I'm confident some of you could get 321,000, you only get 1 or 2 marks because you have to write it as an equation, which is really, really challenging. Hence why it's the very last question on the paper.